But
No, it doesn't.
Lies on the violation of individual rights.
There's actually a really, you know, what's interesting. Religion in the United States is actually a very good example of the kind of things we're talking about, because religion is an area, because of the First Amendment, that the government kind of stays out of generally. Not that they don't entirely. I know a lot of people are going to get mad at me for saying that, but I mean, if you think about it, because what's one thing that like George Lincoln Rockwell, Louis Farrakhan, Martin Luther King, or whoever, I believe this might actually be Martin Luther King quote that said, like, the most segregated day in America is Sunday. Well, why? Because that's the day when everybody goes to church. This was back when everybody in America was more or less Christian, right? Which is, you know, freedom of religion kind of initially meant freedom to be what Christian sect you wanted to be. But I know there was more to that. We can get into that another time. But so blacks go to black church, whites go to white church. It just is. And there's nobody forcing them to do that.
Consequence because
there's nobody forcing them to do that. That is how they prefer it. That is how they choose to do it.
And I don't have a problem with whites going to white churches, right? If they choose, then there's no.
I mean, you're breaking up that. I can't.
No, but hold on, right? If it's their choice, then why is there a need for segregation to happen? Like, why would you ban blacks from coming into a church filled with whites if they don't choose to go there?
Okay, that's a separate question from what we're talking. Like, we're not talking about like segregation, even like in the old South. But first off, I'll respond to why that could be justified, and second, I'll say that's not what we're talking about. It could be justified. For example, let's say you have a public service, like you say you have a public pool that is paid for by whites in a certain area. It's like, oh, it's public. So people from, 3 miles or 5 miles away can just come on in and enjoy all the nice white public services. That's one argument for segregation, is that, hey, the people in this area paid for this stuff. The people from outside who didn't pay for it need to be kept out. Now, because blacks and whites live away from each other, that's sort of how that would happen. Also, I don't want to buy a house in a neighborhood that has blacks, so you would have restrictive covenants where you can buy the house but only agree to sell it to. So there's all sorts of like reasons that are I guess, for lack of a better term, fair to have racial discrimination. But that's not even what we're talking about. That's not even what we're talking about on the alt-right. We're talking about immigration in a country. When you get other groups of people who can come in and vote, that's...
Yeah, no, but again, you keep bringing this up and we don't disagree. One of the things that you reminded me, now that we're talking about houses, I think I spoke about this 2 years ago on my channel. There is actually a Nazi town in the United States of America, like with the swastika and everything, and they only allow white people there. You can like try to get a house and the community has to vote you in.
I would love to know where this is. I mean, I'm not saying I'm just curious. I suspect you might be reading a media article that was possibly not entirely honest.
Well, it has pictures of.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Was it in?
This place was busted up by the FBI, if I remember.
Yeah, was it in North Dakota or something, or was it?
The details elude me. But the point is, like, I remember white people there complaining that they can't sell their house because they couldn't find a buyer.
All right, now, listen. All right, there's a lot of Ryan.
Restrictive covenants are illegal. Restrictive covenants are illegal today. So that would be.
So first of all, now the whole Nazi town thing. Okay, you understand that that's like you're dealing with now. Again, like I feel like this is why one of the problems, and I'm not accusing you of this. I think when people debate, sometimes what happens is you start to get the ideas get ever more like abstract and lofty. We're not dealing with kind of just like what's real, how are people really, what's really going on. Now, like this so-called Nazi town, I understand why lots and lots of white people wouldn't just like gravitate immediately to this Nazi town, because anybody in America that's going to found Nazi town is going to be a fucking weirdo. Okay. Like, let's be honest. Right. And so you're going to want to avoid them. However, that doesn't mean that the very same people that don't want to live in Nazi town won't live in Whitopia, USA, won't live in like Springfield, Kansas. You know what I mean?
Let me show you.
But do you understand the point I'm making?
Well, the thing is,
I'm trying to because the reality of the United States is there's Nazi town, right? And going to live in Nazi town means you're living with weirdos and freaks, outcasts, people that aren't normal. But there's Springfield, Kansas, and that's 100% white too. And it's a wholesome place, and your kids go to school and
you know
play
the
on
thing in Springfield, Kansas, you can sell your house to a black person.
I am not. That is not the point. The point is
the point. You can't do it in the Nazi town. Let me just show it to you.
Listen, you're totally Ryan. You understand what I'm saying here, Ryan?
Yeah,
you get what I mean, right? A normal white town that is not seemingly breaking all of these social taboos against, like, hey, wow, let's raise the flag of a defeated enemy that the United States fought a war against, and we'll be Nazi town. Like, these are weird people. Okay,
you say this, but the communist town.
But the point is that the people that want to live in there's people that want to live in a white town. They want to live in a white town. And Nazi town is not a normal white town. People want normal white towns. They want Springfield, Kansas, where their kids go to school, they play on the swings, they play with other white kids, they go to church, and everything's normal. Nazi town is not that. That's why they're not going to Nazi town.
It's not Nazi town. It's called, actually, let's see.
Well, the left would call it Nazi town. Let's be honest, right?
It's interesting because you have a communist town.
They would totally call that Nazi town.
Why do you not let me make this point?
I'm just joking. I'm joking around. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You also have a communist town and a narco-communist village.
It's New York City.
No, it's okay. New York City still has a government. I'm talking about something that's entirely narco-communist, right? And people go there and they're not afraid of the stigma. If you really like to live amongst white people and you're really scared that blacks will move in, like I don't see why.
Scared. That's obviously
you're really concerned. Okay, concerned.
No, you prefer whites. Why can't you just say it's a preference?
Okay, if you prefer white,
you want to use a word with a stigma.
I will tell you why I don't want to use the preference, right? Because
it's a word without a stigma, because it's not stigmatized.
Because you admitted your own preference earlier.
If I prefer vanilla and someone brings me chocolate, I'll be like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever.
Because you want the racial preference to have a negative stigma. That's why you won't talk about it that way. You just, yeah. All right, anyway, go ahead. Make your point.
But anyway, right, so I wanted to show you the town.
Is it Nazi town? Because I don't want to see any other town.
Yeah, it's the Nazi town. It's not called Nazi town. It's called Yachna.
It should be. Actually, might move to Nazi town. At this point, why not?
It's in the rural Long Island community.
I wonder if Halsey would join me in Nazi town. Like we could have like a little. We could play chess.
Dude, I'm showing you your ethno state, and you're joking about it. Like,
nah, you want to show us?
No, you want to show us
weirdos and tell us that this is what the ethno state's going to be, and that's just not true, man. It's just
what is the function of showing us this?
Yeah.
Well, I actually wanted to point out that people who wanted to achieve your goal already did. Life in that town.
No, our goal is not a weird town with a bunch of
people
eyeballs, dude. That's not our goal.
Okay,
you're trying to like you don't under. All
right. What is wrong with this gentleman that's giving the interview?
Okay, buddy. We want first off, like,
what the hell is this? What is this? What are we doing here?
I thought you would actually be
I'm a professional troll, but I wouldn't do better than you.
I thought you would be happy in order to see that you can have what you want and not be discriminated against. But apparently you're not. Apparently you're
no, this is some bullshit. Like,
do you recognize that the people who are white nationalists also want the white nation to control its state?
Yeah, we don't want just a town full of kind of odd people. Like, I mean, well,
why are they odd? I just don't understand. Like, I'm reading this,
look,
right? And the reason it's called the Nazi town is because their grandfathers, right, were built this, right, and the name stuck. But
right, well, let me ask you something. Okay, are you talking about a town where the people are like avowed like neo-Nazis, or are you talking about just a town with restrictive covenants?
There
was Nazi town that did exist.
A town with restricted covenants.
Okay, well, first of all, restricted covenants are illegal under federal law, so that's impossible.
Yes, and for historical reason, this town apparently seemed to have been allowed to exist. Read the article.
Okay, that's good. I'm extremely happy. I am like quite honestly very happy for the people in that town, but we have loftier goals.
All right, but I don't see why you personally wouldn't move there. I just wondering, like, maybe someone
there's only certain amounts of pieces of property in that town, right? There's only a certain amount of space in that town.
Yeah, and people don't really want to buy them. Like, you would do these people a favor if you buy their house, because most people.
Well, first of all, I wasn't even aware of this place.
But this is why I made you aware. I'm
Do
actually
you
doing these
recognize
people
that
a
personal
kindness.
So
life
are you gonna, if I
decisions-
don't move there, am I now like
personal
a
life-
massive hypocrite in your eyes?
Personal life
No,
decisions
that's
are
not what-
based on
I think they
whole
should sell it.
reasons that don't just include race. It's not because you're a white nationalist that it's contradictory, even to go out with a non-white girl. Even
me put it
I,
this-
Well,
Let
only
me
if
put it
she's
this way.
like.
That is not what I
Like
said. What
I would
what
uproot my life. I
my
would
point-
uproot my life to move to an area that was going to be like a new full-throated, white ethno state that was going to break off from the US. I would, but I would not uproot my life to go to Nazi town. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you think like paying people to
I might actually. Just
but here's
for
the thing,
lulz.
right? Like the reason I'm showing you this is that the people who wrote the article actually had problem selling their house, and I think that in the chat maybe there is someone who wants a house living next to a white community that would do these people a kindness. Maybe not you guys. Maybe in the
Well,
chat.
I guess our whole narrative BTFO. Nobody can
It's
sell.
not, no one is trying to BTFO you here, mate.
No,
There's
come
not-
on, you are.
Oh, come on.
Come on, dude. You thought this was a gotcha. It is kind of
It wasn't a
backfiring
gotcha.
on
You
you.
know, when I talked with the Antifa guy, I also showed him the anarcho-communist.
He did
Right,
he
that's
jump
also-
right away to
that's
go there?
also- That's also a stupid argument against the Antifa too.
It's not an argument. It's Jesus Christ. I can't show you this. But, I thought it's going to be an interesting thing. And I was curious how you guys would
trying to
react
help
to
us
it.
out.
I'm only gonna
You're
move
just
to
trying to
Nazi.
help us out,
Thanks for
please.
being
Is that
helpful.
what
I'm
you're
only gonna
doing?
move to Nazi town if it's like directly next door to Antifa town, and we could just like throw rocks and fight. That would actually be.
Right. So
I don't know,
this
it'd be
is
living,
about
right?
the
Like, it'd be a
Nazi
life.
town. This,
You know,
this
like,
is
it
what
would-
I'm getting from this. You don't like the Nazi town.
No,
right, guys.
the
So-
premise is ridiculous. We want a society. We want a state. We want a place where we can live fully and express ourselves and be complete as like part of a greater thing.
So you don't want to start with something.
A town where the government just allows you to have some contract because of some grandfathered in clause is not what we're talking about here.